Hey, what is good, you guys? I am Jaydeep and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to do a project-based learning and we're going to build a file organizer. So for a while, my downloads folder has been a bit of mess. As most of you know, I am a content creator. I do a lot of image sharing on Twitter, and I do share some code snippets and stuff like that. And as a result, my downloads folder was a bit of a mess. So over the weekend I decided to build a small utility, and because I've already built it, why not also share it with you guys. So without any delay, let's get started. The idea is pretty simple. We take in three inputs from the user: source directory, destination directory, and the type of the file that needs to be moved. Okay, pretty simple. Then we do some basic checks if the source directory and the destination directory exist. If they don't exist, then there's no point moving ahead. So we'll just exit out of the script, and then if they do exist, then start the moving script. We're also going to use logging. If you are new to logging, I already have a detailed video series on that, and I'll leave a link to that in the description, not in the description but in the I button. I always keep saying description, but yeah, it's always the I button. Yeah, again, we take in three inputs: source directory, destination directory, and the type of the file that needs to be moved, and do some checks and start the moving script. So we'll first implement the imports and the logging. Okay, so we are in our actually let me explain to you the folder structure. So again, the folder structure is a bit optional. Some of the stuff which I've done here is for testing purposes, so I was able to test the script. So what we have is the main.py, which does our job. pytest.ini, which is the pytest init configuration. This is just to output the logs while doing the testing, and obviously the test file. Yeah, and the sample. So in order to be able to test if the script works or not, the sample source directory and the sample test directory. So that's the whole folder structure. But the main part, or the main script where the magic happens, is this main.py. Okay, so let us set up some basic logging. So if you're new to logging, what logs allow us to do is generate a step-by-step information of what's happened in a code, and what at which point what has happened. So that is the idea of the logging. So we're going to log everything in a file called as download folder cleaner. So that is what I'm calling this. Each file is going to be time stamped. So the name of the file for each run is going to be download folder cleaner underscore the time of the run dot log. So that is going to be, and the time is going to be obviously in the YYYMMDD format, and this is just the timestamp, nothing else. Then we get the logger of this name and we do some basic config. So again, if you're new to logging, this file image that comes from here. The format is how the output would look like in the file. It would be the time. This is just the separator, the level of the log. So you have set debug. So debug and all the logs above, the level name, and what message we are passing. So before we proceed, what we're going to do is we're going to make a quick change to the logging. So instead of logging to the file first, we're going to log to the standard input. Yeah, so basically this console thing. So we're not going to log to the file directly. We're going to log to the console first, so that we're able to see the debugging of this program. And now what we've done is we've come to the part, the first part, where is the which is where we accept the user inputs. So as I mentioned, we're going to use the built-in argument parser, and we've created an instance of the argument parser class, and on that we call the add argument. Now the document, this was introduced in the version 3.2, and it helps us simplify taking in the user inputs from the console. So what are the, all these three are the same, but basically the difference is the name of the parameter which we given. So what are the parameters which we pass to this add argument method? The source directory, that is the user has to pass in a parameter called a source directory. We have marked it as required is equal to true. The type of the parameter is going to be a string and some help input. Yeah, so that is what we are going to do. And the second parameter is destination directory, and the third is the file extension. So once we have these arguments, what we're going to do is on the arguments we're going to call in the parseargs, which is again a built-in method, and that returns a namespace. The namespace is what is going to be displayed. So if I come back to the Python, come back to the terminal, and I do so, just do python/main.py. So if you see, it's already started to complain that these arguments, source directory, destination directory, and file extension are required. So if you set any of them to false, and now run the script, it will stop complaining about that particular parameter. Okay, the file extension is. Now let's revert this, and if I try to do something called as If you want to, this help text and all is just for the guidance of the user what needs to be entered. So what the user can simply do is python main.py -h, and the help text would also be displayed that what is the expected input from this source data for this particular input. Yeah. So what we're going to do is now try to run this code with let's try to run this code with a valid input and see what happens. Yeah, if you see, we have printed the args. So this is nothing but an instance of the namespace where the source directory is this, the destination directory is this, and the file extension is what we supplied, which is exactly what we supplied. This is so far so good. Nothing so far so good. Nothing bad has happened so far. So I think the whole idea of not typing this out is this makes the tutorials very lengthy. I can speed them up, but I think it's not worth it. The main agenda is how to use these modules. Namespace cannot be directly passed into a script input. What we're going to do is we're going to use something called as vars and convert this namespace into a dictionary. So if I just print vars of this, let's see what happens now. And vars, not vars, but this. Let me print this out. So if you see, it's converted this namespace into a source simply by using vars, and we're going to pass in this vars to our script. This is the start script. So this is the next part of our implementation, calling the start script using the vars. And let's start the implementation, or I'll do the implementation and I'll see you in a minute. As promised, I've implemented the function and now I'm back, and this is the start script. So this complaint is gone, and let me remove this. Actually, we don't need this. And let me enter a space here so that PyCharm stops complaining. And now let us look at, let me minimize this as well for better visibility, and let us now concentrate on the start script. So the start script receives kvargs as an argument, and from the kvargs we're going to get the source directory, the destination directory, and the file extension. Okay, so this is nothing but a as we saw in the a minute back. Can I anyway show you the output? Yeah, not here, but maybe. Can I run this again? I can run this again, but I can just go back to the video in a minute. And so this was a dictionary, and that dictionary, from the dictionary, you can get the values as .get. This is the standard method for fetching values from a dictionary, getting a particular value mandatory, so they should always be present. But if something goes wrong, just to have a second level of defense. Post getting these parameters, we are calling in a function check if directory exists. So this is the second this is the second function which we need to look at, and we'll go to that in a minute. And then if it doesn't exist, log an error and return back. So we check for both the source and the destination. If both of them don't exist, we log an appropriate message using the logger.error. So we have set the level to debug, so all the logs above debug will be set. Error is one of the highest ones. And then what we do is if these checks pass, we continue to run. And if they don't pass, we are obviously exiting, and we are just logging the appropriate message and exiting out. The next is this completed string is equal to without errors. So this is just you don't need to do this, but what I've done is just to give us an idea of whether we completed the script with errors or without errors, and we have adjusted this. If you see here this, so by default the completed string is without errors. So started moving the script. If everything goes okay, that is if this output move files function which you're going to look at in a minute, it runs okay, then this message would say completed script without errors. But if this move files returns false, then this is going to say completed script with errors. If you see, this is what we're going to change, and at a particular time. So this is here. The gist of this is nothing different happens here. You're aware of dictionaries, so we read from a dictionary. We call these two functions to check if the source and destination exist, and then we start the move files, which is the whole core logic. So let us look at this check if directory exists. Okay, right, and just like that, I've implemented the second function. You have to pardon my mouse. I think my mouse is gone. I think I've ordered a new one, but it'll take a couple of days to come through. But yeah, we are back with the second check if directory. So this is stopped complaining. And what does the check directory do? Check if directory exists. So I've done a very good job of naming these functions, not methods, functions. It's one and the same, but they're outside of the class, and we have to respect the naming convention. And check if directory exists does a very simple thing. The default return value is false. It uses a built-in module called as pathlib. So if you see, a pathlib import has now stopped being read out because we're using it. And pathlib is very similar to OS, the OS module. So it allows us to traverse over different paths in your operating systems, be it Windows, be it Mac, or be it Linux. So I'm a Windows user, as you might have already guessed, and I'm going to use this pathlib to traverse path. So I've not tested this code on Mac or Linux, but one of you can test it and let me know in the comment how it works, and what changes you can do, what changes you did if it didn't work, and that would be helpful for everyone else as well. And be sure you host it on the GitHub as well, and share a link in the description, or you can DM me the link on Twitter. I'll leave my Twitter handle somewhere in the description. So yeah, coming back, check if directory exists. So we convert this string into a path, and on the pathlib module we call the isDev function. So this is the whole beauty of using pathlib or OS name, is that the paths are taken. Pathlib is more object oriented. So in the OS module everything is a string, but in the pathlib everything is treated as a class, and that is more object oriented. We check if this path exists, and firstly we check the source, then the destination. If both of them exist, then we what do you say, then what, then we return true, otherwise we return false. Now this is why I'd return the tests. So the tests are important. If I'm showing it to you that if these functions work or not, there's no way I can only run the final code and show you that this works or not. But this is where tests come in handy, and we're going to write a couple of tests. By we I mean I think I'm going to write, and we are going to come back in a minute, not minute but I'm just going to copy paste and show you. So it's obviously going to complain about a few things from main. It's not able to find this read source file from the directory. Okay, let me comment this out, and this out, and then it should stop complaining, because these don't exist for now. And I think and what we're looking for is check if directory exists. Yeah, a nice little test to check if the function which we wrote, check if directory exists, works or not. So what we've done is we've used pytest. Again, I have a detailed tutorial on pytest, what fixtures are and what everything does here. So what we're basically doing here is we're using the inbuilt fixture called a stemter, which is available as part of pytest, not pyder but pytest, and we're creating a temporary directory in memory. So I'm going to print this out as well, just to show you that it actually works. And then we're passing this fixture, this. So firstly we've used two fixtures here. It's a bit confusing if you're new. So tempdir is one of the fixtures which is available built in, and then we are calling this method, this particular function, not method but function, as another fixture. So we can pass this name directly to this test. So this temp directory which is created will be passed directly to this test, and then we run our function check if directory exists to see whether this directory is actually created or not. This will give us an idea of whether our function which we wrote works correctly or not. So I'm going to run this now, and if you see here, this created a temp directory in our again, how this folder structure works, it again is a part of the internal pytest configuration. There's something called as default folder. It's a little bit out of scope of this, but yeah, there's a default directory which pytest configures, and that is where the folder is created. And once this folder is created, we check if this if our function checks for the existence of this folder. So basically this whole thing path is passed, this whole path is passed as an input to our function, and if this path exists, then it returns true. Now if we write another test which gives this function check if directory exists a path which doesn't exist. So if I just do this, if I write another test simply where this path doesn't exist, we know that this path doesn't exist, and then our function, as per the logic, that if the path does not exist, it should return false, and it should also give us a log message. So here live log. If I told you at the beginning that this pytest.ini, these configurations help us to display these logs, checking if this directory exists or not. So we didn't even need this print actually. Yeah, we don't even need this. Our live log has handled that for us. Yeah, and now for this fictional directory which doesn't exist, again, if you see that this didn't checking if this etc exists, etc does not exist, returning false. Coming back, so we know that a function works and the logging which we have put in place also works, and that is how tests help you to get an idea of the tests help you test the code and if it's working properly or not. Yeah, so that is a second function. That is a second function implemented. Now let us move to another one. Similar to check if directory exists, another quick helper function, check if file already exists. So let me minimize this again. So what this function does is that, similarly to checking the directory, if we're moving the files from a source to a destination, and if the file already exists on the destination, we don't want to do anything. So that is the logic. So if this returns true, if this dot, okay, so for just worth noting that for the directory we did isdir, but if it's a file, we do isFile. So it will check if it's a file, if the given input is a file or it's a directory. Here we're checking dot isdir, or we're checking dot isFile. So this is another quick helper function, and what we'll do is, as a result of this, if this returns true, then we'll not do anything. We'll not move the file from the source to the destination. The files from source directory. Yeah. So to move files from source to destination, we have to make sure that the file actually exists. Yep, that there are any files which of the specified extension in the specified source directory. Again, for that, what we do is we use our favorite pathlib module and the path class, and to that we pass the source directory. Yeah. Here, we're not doing the check directory, check source directory exists, because we've already done that in our main driver code. If you've reached this point, we can be 100% sure that this source directory exists. And then what we've done is we have created an instance of the path class, and on the path, on the instance, not on the path, but on the instance, what we do is we call something called as glob. So what glob does is it reads this particular, it iterates over this instance, which is nothing but this path, and tries to find all the files of this particular extension which we have supplied. This is the pattern which we have supplied, and then if the file of that pattern or that particular extension exists, just return it as a generic console. And if I do Python and from main import read underscore files underscore from underscore source underscore directory. Actually, I don't need to do this. I need to run the test and write a test for this. I think I've not written it, but what I can do is this. Let me actually do a print, or what we'll do is not instead of doing this, ret underscore val is equal to what can I do? It needs the source directory, right? Let me copy the source directory, and okay, the alarm just went off. But let me copy the source directory, and where's my source directory? Somewhere here, this one. Shift insert source directory, and the extension which I want is, I think I still have a few jpeg files, and it's complete. It is complaint. Okay, I think it's complaint for the path. Slash unmatched this. Okay, that's enough. And if I do a type of ret underscore val, it's a tuple, and ret underscore val. So if I just print ret val, it should return values. It should not return this. It's not. Actually, what I've done is I've done something very stupid here. I should have called the function. I didn't even call the function. That's why it was a tuple. If I do this, oh damn, if I do this time, we'll get it correct. So that's the whole problem with the live code in that code, and then it's easier to explain than do this. And it's complaining because, again, I know why it's complaining. Let us remove this extra round bracket, and it's already entered this function. And if I now do a type of ret underscore val, so it's a generator, and we can always iterate over for item in ret underscore val 1 2 3 4 print item. If you see, and this is what we're doing. So this gives us the so this is how this function works, and it gives us the files of a particular extension. This is the whole thing about read files from the source directory. So these are the two methods which I wanted to quickly show you. This is again at the heart of it, and the method which we have used is, again, we've used the pathlib module and we've used the glob method. Let's go over this move files function. So what it does is it takes in the source directory, the destination directory, and the extension. So all of them are strings. We convert them to the path as you saw above in the respective function. Now what we then do is call the read files from the source directory and return it, and this, as we saw, returns a generator of the files which are present. Now once we have the generator, what we do is we iterate over the generator. Now remember, we can iterate over the generator only once. Once the generator is exhausted, you cannot go over it again. You have to regenerate it, and that is how it works. To extract the files.stem and the files.suffix. So what is the file.stem or file.suffix? So basically this is the stem, this is the name of the file, and this is the file.suffix. So this is the extension. Yeah, so this is what we have done, and this is how we have created we have got the file name. From this file name we do a nice little logging which says moving file name with this name to this destination directory, and then a simple check if it already exists. If it already exists, do nothing and just exit and just continue and move over to the next file, because I've not implemented any logic. I don't want to do anything if the file already exists. As I mentioned, I'm okay with having some of the files to move manually. And if the file doesn't exist, then we take use of this nice little utility called as shutil, again part of the built-in, nothing different. It is once all the for loop exists, we write a nice log which says that okay, total number of file moves for the extension this is file counter. So it also outputs the number of files it has moved, and if everything goes okay, return move complete. So move complete is equal to true. Basically it tells that here. So as I mentioned, we have completed string by default without errors. So if everything goes okay, and the move files will always be true. Move files will always be true. Move files will always be false. Sorry, default is false, and hence we would never enter this particular part, and the error message would always say completed script without errors. But if something goes wrong here, this function would return false, and if not false becomes true, and then this error completed string would become with errors, and the logger would say completed script with errors at this particular time. So that's just how the logic works. What we'll do is we have to actually test this function as well, and we can write tests for that as well. So you can actually run this directly, you don't need to write tests, but it's always advantageous to write tests, and that is why I have this sample source directory where I have this sample.txt file, and we're going to move it to a sample destination. So let's quickly write a test for this move function. Right, let's write two test cases and move to test.py and here. So let us import our move files because it's now available, and the source directory is sample src, the destination is sample dest, and this is extension is equal to txt. So basically at the end of, if we run this test, the file should be present here. Okay, so we're going to run this test, and we've enabled live logging, so we are able to see this as well. Hopefully the test pass. I think it does. It has. So let us look at the output of the test. Processing file of extension txt. So it's come here. So we've got move files, right? So read files from the source. So firstly it's gone here, read files from source directory. Actually processing files of the extension this. So it's come here, processing files of the extension this. So this log is okay, and then moving file is equal to file name sample.txt to sample.dest. So this exists, and it does it. So it's not come here, check the file doesn't I think we can do an else here as well, but I think that's just all. And then total file moved for extension txt is 1. So we have moved one file, and if you click here, the sample text is now okay. And just the reverse test, move file from destination to source, and if I run this now, again the file is back to where it already was. Processing file of extension txt, this moving file sample.txt to sample source directory to I think what we can do is we can improve this logging. Moving file this to directory is equal to this, and I think this looks a bit better, and directory. And now let us run this test right here. Yeah, processing file of extension this, moving file name this to directory this, and total file moved for extension txt is 1. So this now looks much more cleaner. More tests which I wanted to show you, and let me quickly these two functions. Let me uncomment it out. The only thing which we have not tested here is I don't think we need to test start script does nothing but calls a lot of other functions which we have written, and we've written tests for each one of these. So as long as this is tested, we don't need to test this, because we know that if this works, all these three are well tested, the start script should work, because what it does is just calls all of them. So we're going to write a test for the other, check if test file exists. So check if test file exists here. So what we've done here is we've used another inbuilt Python module called as temp file, and we've created a named temporary file. Okay, and we write that to the file, write this hello world text to the file, and check if that file exists. So it will give us a confidence in this function as well, that okay, check if file already exists works or not. Okay, so check this. So this test is working, and it also gives us some degree of confidence in our this function as well. Check if this exists. Time for the bigger show, that is if this works actually in it actually works for. So the tests are okay, we know that this utility is working, but we want to be first. Let's exit this. It has actually exited the terminal itself. Yeah, let me restart. So just to test if this whole script works or not. Yeah, and what we're going to do for that is we're going to enable file-based logging as well, because that is the last part I think which we didn't see. So we did read actually let me keep this. We already have some files, PDF files in the downloads folder. So what we can do is, actually I'm not going to show you the downloads folder. What I can instead show you is, this is where I store most of my content for Twitter and Insta, which I upload. Not Insta, I don't upload to Insta anymore, but Twitter. And I've created a directory called as test here. Yeah, and some of the images. So I want to move. So the idea is move from downloads to this image content, but what we instead want to do is we want to take these files. Maybe let's take 1, 2, 3. Let's take these, maybe this one. Let's take these files and move it in the test directory. So the test directory already has PDF files, and it now has some PNG files. And just to make sure that we don't have those copies here, they are removed completely from this one. We've moved it from this. So all these files, all these three files, AI versus ML versus DL, adding text, padding.x, calidraw, these should be moved to our image share folder. So that is what we're going to do, and let us write a command for that. Not let's write a command for that, the command for that already exists, so just run it. So the destination directory is going to be image shares. Image shares. Actually, we'll move to image shares as well. But what was an image shares? Templates. Image content. So the script is already run, and let us see the download logs. Not the download logs, but the logs. So checking if Twitter this, checking if, again I think we can do a better job naming this, and let's do that. So directory, checking if directory is equal to this exists. This exists, returning true. Checking if this exists, returning true. Starting script at 29/11/2022 5 AM in the morning. So I'm recording this video very early. From files, this to this for PNG files. This to move files from source is equal to this to destination for PNG files. So if you see, we had processing file for extension PNG, moving file, adding text, this to this directory, moving file AI versus ML, moving file this. Total number of files moved with this, completed script without errors. Now let us go back to the image content folders, and if you see, it's already back here. And if you go and check this one, this only contains PDFs now. If you want to move the PDFs, what you can do is you can run the script again and maybe PDF, and want to redirect it to a proper directory. I think the directory is PDF content. And this is already completed. Checking if directory this exists, return this exists, checking if the directory this exists, PDF content also exists, and total number of files, moving file this to directory this, moving file this, total number of files moved for extension. Okay, so the file, okay, if you see, I think here, so if you see the file .pdf already exists, so it's only given only copied the file which didn't exist, it skipped one, and the count is also correct. So it gives us a fair degree of confidence that our code is mostly working correctly. Now you can play around with this as you want. You can download, I leave a link to this code in the description, and you can play around with it, and you can schedule it as part of, say, a batch script, or you can run it periodically to clean up your folders. But this is a very good project which gives you a lot of hands-on. So that is it for this video, and again, just to stress enough, project-based learning is the best. So in this in this particular tutorial, we saw how to take user inputs using the argparse module. We saw how to construct a code in a functional manner, how to write the various functions, how to handle return values from those functions, how to handle logging most importantly, and we also learned how to test the code as well. Apart from that, we also learned certain modules such as argument passing, the pathlib module. What is the difference between OS and pathlib? I tried to stress on that a bit as well. Again, just to remind you, pathlib is more object oriented. The OS module works on strings. So just a reminder. But the whole idea is, don't get stuck in a tutorial hell. Pick a random project, pick any, you can get a number of lists on social media about projects which you can build, and start building it. Even this project, you know what this project is going to do. I gave an idea at the very beginning. Try to implement it on your own. If you get stuck, then refer to this code. You can make modifications to this code as well, but leave a link to that modification in the description. Upload it to GitHub and leave a link to that in the description. I'll 100% make sure that I check all of your suggestions or all of your changes and what could possibly be improved in this code, or if there was something wrong, if something could be done better in this code. Yeah. And again, before I leave you guys, the usual request that if you're new to the channel, do consider subscribing and hit the bell icon somewhere on the UI, probably next to the subscribe button. It'll help you get notifications from all my videos, and it'll also keep me motivated for making such content in the future. So with that being said, thank you for watching.